I just want to give you my take on what was channeled to me. A lot of you think that your past has nothing to do with where you're headed. However, we all were tested during the pandemic as to what side we're going to fall on. Many of you decided to capitalize off of other people's demise. And because you did that, you either acquired manipulative magician abilities in order for you to prosper at the expense of another person. Others of you tried the hard and burdensome path that was already established in the world and are fighting many obstacles because people have partnered up into cults, covenants, networks, fraternities, familia situations, whether in spirit or by blood, right? And in the process of doing that, you recreated nepotism, and that nepotism is going to bite you in the ass. I'm going to tell you that. Because when you don't have standards and it's all about nepotism, one day you're in the clique or the herd or the pack, and the next day you could be out. Or they could scapegoat your ass and make you take the fall for the whole group. That's what you don't understand. Here's another situation that's going on. Another situation is going on that began before the 60s, but became prevalent even more so in the 60s as women had to get out into the workforce because men were like, nah, we shouldn't have to support the women and the children. They have the abilities to go out here and work. And if you will notice, more and more children are working, more and more women are working, right? And then these same women and children are stating that they should be able to keep their money that they worked for. This is something that has caused men to become distorted, because in the past, they were able to claim their spouse and their children as dependents. But if they're working, they want to be able to claim their own money and start building up their social security for present and future. Right? Because we're talking about benefits. Everybody in any country is a nationalist citizen of that country that has to abide by those laws. So, within those countries are also state regulations, right? So, what individual goes out to work and has no benefit and can't keep their own money is a slave, right? So, the distorted masculine now wants the woman and the children to go out and work and basically, technically, enslave his own family. And if he can't do that, he keeps searching from person to person to person. And I say person because he has opened up his parameters to now incorporate males, right? If a male want to be his slave, he's game for it, which is why they legalized same-sex marriages, right? So now this is what we have going on now. Now everyone is a business entity. I've been saying it. You have to think of yourself as a business entity. You cannot think of yourself in terms of these marriages where one protects the other. Because as we have found out throughout history, that people are being abandoned, sabotaged, stolen from, and gossiped about so that they can't progress in our society. And in the past, yes, it was women, but men are getting into their female energies and are coming across as feminine entities, but they're really with male genitalias, or they're male genitalias that had procedures to transform themselves into female receptacles. Now, when we think about that, we have men who now say, look, they go both ways. They can have a man or a woman, right? And men are constantly telling women, oh, well, you can have a woman. Well, no. There are some women that will have other women, right? However, the majority of women are like, look, no. We're not going to prod each other, impale each other. No, we're not going to do that. However, men are more likely to be open to those suggestions. So, now here is our society where we have men competing with women for men because of this bisexual acceptance. And they'll swear up and down, women do the same thing. Well, if most of the time when women do it, it is not for sexual purposes. It's to aid one another. And then we have single women who are finding it very hard to survive because they're like, no, I'm not going to be with just any man. I'm not going to be with a man that's bisexual. I'm not going to be with a man that's polyamorous or polygamous. So she has to be single because everybody's trying to recruit the single man in order to help them financially. And it's all about the finances, right? We're talking about people being cannibalistic towards one another because of our economic situation where we've been going through recessions and depressions and inflation. And like I said, They want to pretend like our past is not going to affect our future. Right? But it will. It always does. What you put out there always comes back. Always. Even if you don't believe in karma. But if you do believe in karma, you will attract what you are. Yes. So, now, we're living in a society where people say, well, we'll share the impact by being impacts, right? Pack mentality. Be amongst the herd, right? If you don't share the burden with them, then they want to annihilate you or scapegoat you. Okay? So, this is what's going on. Now, like I said, it is, again, having to do with the divine feminine. The divine feminine who has been typically uneducated, who typically had to submit to the authority of men and render all of her assets and possessions to a man as he power of attorney through marriage contracts, whether it's spiritual, whether it's business, whether it's state contracted through the government. And women are trying to find their way through this life as independent and as a sole entity, because men are not allowing women to unite. Men will target women that are two or more. When I say target, that means all of a sudden you became so attracted to them that they just had to come and flirt with you. That they just had to come and lay you down, right? And then while he lays you down, he knows that now he can put his manipulative control on you and your activities, right? Because you're still under the concept that relationships were the way that they were, but they're not. It's in the recent past that should have opened your eyes to what relationships are now. Relationships are about opportunity, one way or another, sexually, spiritually, financially. Very few are genuine love. In the past, those was the exceptions to the rules. However, presently, the exception of the rule is that two people are together just because they earnestly love one another. And they will fight the battles together, ruling out everyone else. Which is why we can see within the spiritual community, everybody targets the Nine of Pentacles. Who is the Nine of Pentacles? The individual lone wolf who stands alone and does what they do on their own and can at least get by. if not successful as far as making money on a grand scale. But most Nine of Pentacles are headed to making money to where they at least reach the finish line, of some type of independence. So when I see so many men openly confess themselves as divine feminines and that their love target happens to be another male, right? And I see that, he is identified with divine feminine only on one aspect. And that aspect is to have a man that's dedicated, loyal, and supportive. And typically, there's nothing wrong with that to say that that's not what anyone would want. However, the difference is most of them want to have the role of a wife being taken care of and a buddy that they can do adventures with and like the same things and have sexual activities involved. So they see themselves as a better option for men, whereas women can like the same thing. However, most of the time they like it as a spectator because they don't want to do football. They don't want to do boxing. They don't want to, necessarily, hike and climb Mount Everest. Now, there are some who will, right? Or venture the world as a vagabond. There are some who will. However, the majority of women prefer to be stable and within a household. If they're in partnership. And even when they're not in partnership, they still prefer to at least have a homestead. Some place where they can be creative, do their gardening, do their crafts, do their art, music, and that sort of thing, even if they're single. The problem is you have people who use demographic analytics to find out who's the single people out here. They use the spiritual community to see who are the single people who have money and try to target them, whether in to offer business ventures or to steal from these people that seemingly are alone. So this is causing people to invest in security. High-tech security, high spiritual security, where everyone has to be investigated at all times, because one person could appear to be a real human being and in a blink of an eye can turn into the ops. Similarly, what we've seen in the Matrix, where it seems like you're talking to a human being and then all of a sudden this is now an Agent Smith, right? So what's not going to happen is things are not really going to return the way that it was. It's not going to be that way. I'm going to tell you why. Because first of all, when Pluto gets out of Capricorn and it goes into Aquarius, which is the house of innovation, there's going to be innovative ways to put in to things that are established now. Yeah. But no worries, because Jupiter in Aries, which is the house of self, which is the house of beginnings, right, will also establish new beginnings. So then when Saturn is in the house of Aquarius, you're also talking about new and inventive ways to enforce discipline. And you'll see that happening through the changes in the apps. You'll see that happening in the way that people are now relating to one another. This is long term because it takes Saturn 2.5 years to go through a sign, right? It takes Pluto almost 16 years to go through a sign, right? Jupiter's a little faster, but at the same time, we have other things that are going on. Because nobody talks about Neptune, right? But Neptune is a force to be reckoned with. But nobody talks about it because nobody understands Neptune. So, look at where Neptune is in your chart. Look at where Neptune is in today and see how it relates. Another thing that you all need to understand is when you look at your birth charts, you have to go to where all of the elements are united, right? And find out what makes you up, right? If you have an abundance of fire percentage in your chart, it doesn't matter that your ego, which is your sun sign, is in a water sign. It does not matter because the dominant force is fire. Also, you also have to see whether you're majority cardinal, your majority mutable, or your majority fixed according to your placements. This is very important. Too many people are surface level astrologists. And that is why they're confusing the whole spiritual community with misinformation. Talking about they're an Aquarius or they're this sign, that sign. Yes, that's your ego. That's how you operate when you want things. However, you have to realize you have to be unified with the other components that make you up. So, in my opinion, yes, you could be mostly feminine and you're a male. But what you were supposed to have done was be attracted to a masculine female, not be attracted to a male, and vice versa. A female who is feminine on the inside should be attracted to a male. However, a masculine female needs to be attracted to a more feminine male. Otherwise, you have two opposing energies. Well, they're not opposing, but they're the same. But what happens when a positive electricity and a positive electricity, yes, they may be able to create only momentarily though, and then they will repel one another. That's why it's important to understand electricity and magnetics. Understand this in order to really understand what astrologists are trying to communicate to you.